This is Found Revenue with Tom Collins.
Hey everybody, it's Tom Collins. Welcome to Found Revenue. Glad to have you here. We have this awesome guest for you today, Steve Gray. And if you know Steve, he's genuine. He talks from the heart. He's had some great success. He's conquered some awesome achievements. And yet he started out, as ordinary as you and I, in the sense of, started out going, hey, here's a goal. We're going to go get it. And learned a thing, conquered it, did the next thing, conquered it, and now is highly successful. And yet, as you'll notice, he's completely grounded, and there's a lot of reason why for that. And we talk about that today. Steve and I were in a mastermind group years ago, was a client for a little bit, and he had an experience, and he called, and we talked about it more than one time. But I want to have you listen in as Steve talks about his transformation, his evolution from someone who we would consider highly successful to going through this transformation to even more successful with a different mindset. And I think the mindset and that attitude and what he brings, I think is very, very valuable. Some of the found revenue techniques that he shares, we talk about, and I think if you're dedicated and serious to driving business and growing your business, you're going to learn a lot from what he has to say. So without any further ado, Steve Gray, here we go. Stay tuned. So here we are, Steve Gray. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Found Revenue, man. Glad to have you on. Just want to jump right in. So the biggest thing to kick off these podcasts, I always love asking people kind of about the journey that got them here. Like,
sure. When
did you know you were going to be an entrepreneur? Was it as a little kid? Was there some experience you had? Was it a long-term pursuit? Kind of give us a little insight into the background of Steve Gray.
Yeah, so entrepreneur-wise, I knew I was going to be in business or wanted to pursue business. The bigger, I call it making money, in the sense that not having a job, right? Having something besides working for somebody else very early. When I was in high school, I actually had a computer consulting service that I put together. And I went around and charged people, I don't remember what it was, $50, $80 an hour to put their networks together for the businesses. And I made probably a couple grand, I don't know, 10, 15 grand in high school doing that.
Oh, nice.
And I mean, maybe it was more, maybe it was less, but that was kind of where I started. And my dad was an entrepreneur. I say that with delicate quotes, in the sense that he had some gas stations when I was growing up, and he actually had a pizza shop at one point. Okay. They were more franchised, so that's kind of where the quotes is. And then he's taken over the business that my grandfather started many, many years ago. So that's certainly more entrepreneurial. I've been around business, but never really. I think I'm probably the first one, with the exception of my grandfather, I guess, to really have started something from scratch. I'm going to go do something that nobody's done before in business-wise in our family. So I guess my point is, I grew up with it. I knew that I had the drive. I certainly thought it was stupid, and still think it's stupid to go work for somebody and have them tell you how much you're going to make, right? And I get it, being on the other side now, right? So my job as the owner is to get as much work done for as little as possible.
Oh, yeah.
I just don't like being on the side where I'm the one doing the work, getting paid. Anyway, so I think that's the long answer to your question of, yes, I've known for a very long time that I wanted to work for myself. Online marketing, direct response wise, that's really, I think, early 2000s. I had worked for a .com years ago, or late 90s, that actually we ended up getting bought by Schwab, and it was a crazy ride. We went from nothing to basically 180 million run rate. I think I've told you the story before. In 3 years, and I was the fifth employee, and I think I walked away with several $1 million, $2 or $3 million at the time. I ended up losing it all. That was right when the market decided it was no longer going up and was going down. So, but that kind of got me. Yeah, it was a wild ride.
That I still just think about that. I think, wow, $2 or $3 million.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's funny because I was young. I was like 22 at the time.
Oh, wow.
And I'd only seen the market go up. And I thought it was going to continue to go up. So I had leveraged, the long story is that I'd leveraged, bought some more Schwab stock after we were purchased on margin. And for the first month or 2-3 months, I was making money out there. I was a genius, right? I'd made another couple $100,000, and then all of a sudden it wasn't going up anymore. And by the time I did a study abroad because I went back to school to finish my bachelor's degree after CyberCorp. And we had gone from basically $3 million down to $700,000 at the end of 2001.
Wow.
And we really didn't. A lot of guys make money and they blow it. They go get a car and a house. And didn't really do that. I held on to it and didn't really spend a bunch of it. I just didn't invest it very well. I thought it was going to come back, and I was impatient in the process of $700,000 was no longer good enough, right? I mean, looking at it now, hell, I'd sit on $700,000 in cash and be happy with it, right? But no, I had to have it back. So I put all of my money that was left, the $700,000, into long-term options for Schwab, and then it just kept going down, and it just down and down and down. And by the time we got back in early 2002, I think we were down to about $300,000. And then over the next couple of years, we just lived on it while I was trying to figure stuff out. But that's where I got into Herbalife. That's a whole other story. But Herbalife is what got me into online marketing, because I figured out how to sell the products online, figured out how to build a website, put a e-commerce store, got it ranked on Google on the first page. I don't know if you remember, and your listeners may not, but if anybody that's been around the space for a while, there was a product called Stomping the Search Engines back in early 2000s. And Andy Jenkins and Brad Fallon. And that was kind of one of the first internet courses that I bought, and started doing SEO and started figuring that out. And then I started doing some AdWords back in the day when you could throw a zillion keywords in one ad group and turn it on and away you go. And so just started figuring it out, and didn't really know what I didn't know at the time. I was just trying to, move forward, and then ended up segueing into online marketing through affiliate. I was an affiliate for a long time. I figured out how to buy traffic, and then was an affiliate for World of Warcraft, and found out that the guy that was running that, I think he was 19 at the time, and I was mid-20s, and I asked him, how's it going? Because I was his top affiliate for the month, and I think I'd made $7,000 that month in commissions. And he's like, oh, I made 40. And I'm like, what the hell? $40,000, I'm clearly on the wrong side of the table. And so that's when I decided to move into the offer owning, and then partner with somebody to I think you remember Chip Rion at the time. We worked on World of Warcraft, and then we had our solar panel business, do-it-yourself solar panel. And then after that, after I went my own way back in 2012, I started Primal, which is our health business, right? And the Primal survival business. Yeah, Primal Labs, now Primal Labs. And that's grown crazy fast over the last several years, 2012 to I guess last year. We went from basically nothing to 30 million, and you were talking about Inc. 5000, so we've hit that 2 years in a row. I think we were 242. Awesome. Yeah, so it's congrats. been a fun ride. Thank you. I don't know if I'm telling you what you want to hear here, but that's kind of the long story of how we got to where we're at.
So there's a couple things I want to draw out, because as you know, I know a lot of the high points of the story here. So
yes,
you made a decision a few years ago, right before you started Primal, to go a different direction. And you went and saw Dan Peña, right?
Yeah, Dan.
Would you be willing to share some of that experience about just what was the change in you, and what was the decision making that caused you to go this new direction?
Yeah, so
I think there's a lot of merit in this, right? I mean, sure. Buying traffic's cool, but I think this is pretty powerful.
So previous to the Peña event, and I didn't want to go to the Peña event at all, because Chip Brown, it was almost like Peña, unless you've listened to him and know him, he comes across as a cult icon. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, this is the next Kool-Aid drinking thing. And it's really not. He does have a way about him, but I didn't want to go because I was looking, I wanted a lifestyle business. I wanted to make enough money, to just screw off and do whatever the hell I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And some of your listeners, if they've gotten to that point, and I know you've had the experience, is that once you've had the chance to screw off for a while, you don't really want to screw off anymore. Like, there's only so much not working that you can do before you get bored and dissatisfied.
Well, and you and I spent quite a bit of time together in Jeff Rose Mastermind, and we hung out quite a bit. And I could see your restlessness, if you will, right? Just kind of to set the stage that you were like, you know, if you've been to a mastermind group, you get up, you share, you do your hot seat thing. And, you know, Steve, you would get up and it was like, yeah, you know, we're doing great. And I'm happy, but I'm not really anymore. I need some more nectar of the gods, but I'm bored of it.
Yes.
What do I do now, right?
Yes, I remember that. Yeah. I do. I remember that in San Diego that year, having that, and that was very true. It was frustrating. So I went to the Peña event, and you know, in some ways, I feel like the veil was lifted, or my eyes were open, or however you want to say it. And I do have to give Dan. I talk to him from time to time, and I tell him thank you every time. I came back, you know, with a pendulum swing. On one end, I was over here to begin with. On one side with do nothing and make as much as possible and screw off. And then I kind of came back 100% the other way, which is, all right, no more bullshit. We're going to kick ass and take names, and, you know, we're going to do whatever it takes. And I think I've kind of come back somewhere in the middle at this point. But the shift was certainly, I think the biggest shift for me was that I was doing all the same amount of work trying to create a lifestyle business, and maybe a little bit more work, but not that much more, would build a business that was something that somebody would buy and something that would run without me. And when I realized that, I was like, well, damn, why am I wasting my time trying to create this scenario that isn't necessarily making me happy when I could do a little bit more and have something that's a lot better? And so that was kind of the shift for me. That, yes, lifestyle's fun, but when you build a business that runs without you, you still have a lifestyle, but you've also got the business. That was the takeaway, I think, for me, and the realization that, you know, kind of the internal introspection of why have I been telling myself with my self-talk that I couldn't or shouldn't or can or wouldn't or whatever previous to now, and then I don't know, it's just one of those things that just clicked. It's like, yeah, that's what I want to do. And so I came back, and that was actually the time where I told Chip Brown, hey, it's been good, but I'm going my own way. And I came back and focused 100% on Primal and the survival business, and away we went. So now we're here 5 years later, almost 6 years later. So it's such an awesome story, because just watching you from the side, from a distance, and then having a conversation every so often, it was really fun to hear you talk through that experience from the, okay, I'm going to go live my full potential. And like you said, the pendulum went all the way the other way. Yeah. And, but in that time you built this awesome foundation, and you've kind of settled into settling into the rhythm of a $30 million company is no small task. Right. But seeing you build it and being I would call you a builder. Yes, very much so.
You fit that groove really, really well, right? And so,
yeah, it has. Obviously, there's learnings that you work with PMI for a while, and you know that growth doesn't come without its pain points, and you have challenges, and sometimes you grow and sometimes you contract. But yeah, it's a learning experience. And I think overall, my view on business has changed from, I want to make as much as possible with as little amount of work. I mean, ultimately, that's kind of the underlying, feel everybody wants to do, but also tempered with or modified with the idea that, this is an opportunity to get better, be better, do better, and learn in that process. And so it's, like life, it's a unique teaching mechanism that you learn your lessons or you don't. And if you don't, then you pay very dearly for it. So.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, right? Well, I've heard the phrase, and people say this. There's this: go for pursue money or don't pursue money. Pursue potential other goals and those types of things. And I've heard it said that go make $1 million a year, not necessarily for the money, but because of the person that it makes you.
Absolutely, that's Jim Rohn, I think, and I love Jim. Yeah,
yeah. And you seem to be one of those guys where the money part takes care of itself, obviously, at this point, but what you're building is a bigger cause and more important, and right?
Yeah, I'm excited about, for me, it's a platform. It's like climbing a stair. Like, I don't know, I think of it like climbing a big staircase of giant steps, like Jack and the Beanstalk giant. You're up in these huge steps that you can't even see past the next step. And all you can do is get to that next step, which then you can see the next step. And it's been very much like that for me, where I've achieved something. I'm like, oh, well, now that I've been here, now I see all this other stuff that could be possible too. And that's the exciting part, is the expansion of your view and your experience, I think. So
I think that's awesome. So in the sense of the topic of found revenue, one of the things we talked about before we got on is, something that's boring that people don't ask about, but that actually really makes a difference revenue wise for you, and or even like as you were talking about going from the step to step, right? Some of those steps, they open up new sources of revenue for you. So I was going to ask you kind of what surprised you along the way that is like more powerful than you expected to be, or better for you, or one of those things that kind of crossed through and went, oh.
Well, I think one of the ones that comes to mind immediately is the power of all the stuff that marketers don't normally want to think about. Like, the first one that comes to mind for me is just customer support and the operations side. And when you think you're answering the phones and you're not, it has a huge effect on how your customers perceive you, how happy they are, what refunds you get, what chargebacks you get. Yeah, I think and I look at it like found revenue in some ways is like, oh, I didn't know it was there. I think a lot of times just reducing your refund rate in itself is found revenue, because you're already making the dang money, but you're not keeping it all because you're pissing your customers off. So that was a huge, when we hired our COO, he came in and cleaned up a lot of that. And that started, then I was like, wow, well, I had no idea it was this broken. Because I'm always focused on more. Let's go, more sales, more offers. Let's build. Let's go. And you over here take care of that. And the person that was doing it was doing an okay job, but certainly not to the level that we're at now. So I think that's probably one. Another one, which I am continually. It's one of those you heard it all the time, but it's your customer list. And everybody says, your money's in your list, and it is true that you mail that daily and you keep a good relationship with it. It is an asset that will pay over and over and over again. Another one in the health business that we found was super helpful is we created, so in the health, just a little background, we sell both information and supplements. Team up with doctors. The model is not anything different than what other companies do. But
just a little bit bigger.
Some, maybe. Well, maybe, I guess. Yeah.
I guess probably by the time the companies you're targeting and looking at as competitors, maybe not bigger anymore, but
yeah. I was going to say, I look at what Agora's doing now, thinking I'm kind of small. So
right. That's great perspective, right? Yeah.
Yeah, very much so. So one of the things that we did is we created all of our products, and obviously it takes a few products to do this. But we created, in essence, an extra, I'm going to say roughly 70 to 80,000 a month in contribution after cost of goods, just putting a catalog in the outgoing orders for the customers.
That's nice. That's huge.
Order from our e-com store, and all that is free orders that actually I think are better orders because the customer is doing it on their own without any initiative to push them to do it. So that was another one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think you want more, or you want me to stop?
Well, no, let's keep going. I was gonna comment on that while you think of the next one, if you will, because go
ahead.
Just the concept of direct mail, right? People say, oh, direct mail is expensive or whatever, but one of the things that I'd like to point out to people is when you send physical fulfillment, particularly if you're an e-com company, you're going to send it anyway. When you add, if that is the sales letter for the next thing, so the fulfillment is awesome and there's something in there that moves them to the next step, it's one of the most powerful direct mail marketing pieces you can deliver. And so putting your magalog or catalog in, it sounds really simple and boring, and yet what it produces for you.
Simple and boring, yes.
Right. And so people don't talk about it a lot because it's like, who's going to pay $5,000 for consulting on, hey, put a catalog in your stuff? Right. Anyway.
The other one, which again is blasé, and you hear it all the time, is continuity. I mean, that has been the cornerstone of our business. And I'm going to say, I have to double check, but I think we have probably $750,000 to $1 million a month in continuity gross right now. After refunds and cost of goods, it ends up being about half that. But that's stable money to take care of overheads and everything else, so that when your front end stops working or you get kicked off of an advertising channel, at least you're not back to square zero or ground zero. So that's another very, quote, boring but powerful one.
Right. And sounds so easy and obvious, but like you said, it covers your nut.
Yep.
So you can go be more aggressive, or you can take a hit and keep on rolling, right?
Yep. Trying to think of any other ones that are kind of like, oh yeah, I've heard that before. I think, back to what I appreciate you talking about, and what's always been big for me is the fundamentals. And I know you either still coach baseball or used to coach baseball, or and when I talk about marketing, I always think of Vince Lombardi's speech that he would do every year, and he'd start with guys who were world-class athletes, and the first thing he did was hold up a football and say, "This is a football," and start from the beginning every year. Like, this is how we tackle, this is how we run, this is how we block, because the fundamentals are what build everything. And I think that's not really found money in sense, but when I realized that many years ago and shifted my focus away from all the shiny stuff that was going on to just the basics, things really started moving forward.
That's awesome.
And it's a big, sure, there's always cool tricks to try, but at the end of the day, it's about getting a customer and selling them more stuff. And when you apply everything you do into that kind of model, it becomes becomes a lot clearer on what you should and shouldn't do. So,
absolutely. When you focus on where, like you said, customer acquisition and monetizing the customers, as opposed to what's cool, right? It really changes things. So, it's funny thinking about you mentioned Agora and the bigger companies and, the perspective that brings. Do you feel like you're always in the chase mode to beat to go to the next level kind of a thing? Or are you just now driving the business what's kind of your thought process there?
Yeah, I do feel like I'm always chasing, and chasing's probably the wrong word, because I don't really feel like I'm chasing, but I certainly have a perspective. Right. And several, like I had an opportunity, I was really grateful to go down to Nicaragua just recently, to go to the Agora event down there. One of my buddies in Agora Financial, Joe Schriefer.
Cool.
Speaking of which, if you have not talked to him, he would be a great person to talk with. Very, very sharp marketer.
Yeah, I'd love to.
They've grown Agora from like 50 million to 270 million. I'm sorry, 170 million in like 4 or 5 years. So it's been a huge growth for them. Smart guy. But going down there, I realized a couple things. One, when you've got a company that does $1 billion a year, 30 million doesn't sound like so much. And the fact that they did that over a 40-year period. So, everybody wants to be, I shouldn't say everybody, entrepreneurs often like to think that they're going to be the next, I'm trying to think of who it is on our list. One of the Inc. 500, he was number one last year. It was one of the box, the crate, like it was either Man Crate or something like that. The ones that go from nothing to 100 million in a year, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And the reality is that even if you're growing fast, sometimes it just takes time to get all the pieces together and get it right. And so to your point, do I feel like I'm chasing? I don't feel like I'm chasing. Sometimes I feel like I'd like to go faster than I'm going. But I do feel like that there's always, like I was saying before, there's always a next kind of perspective. Right. Okay, I'm here. Now what's next? And that goes back to, like, if you said, okay, Steve, you got $100 million in the bank, you can't work anymore, I'd be a little bit stir crazy. Like, what am I going to do? I'm not going to play golf all day. I'm not going to go sit at home and watch TV. So I've got to do something. So that's kind of what fuels where I'm at. So yes, certainly driving the business and making sure that the business is working like it's supposed to, but also what's exciting, what's next, what do I want to do, how do I grow the business?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Very cool. Very cool. Well, so one of the things that I found, and you and I haven't talked about this, but one of the things that you experience when you walk in the room in certain environments, right? People look at you like the rock star, and I call it the astronaut, right? Because you're the only guy in the room, so to speak, who's been to the moon, and business-wise. What's the question people ask you when they put it together and they go, oh, you're doing that kind of revenue? What's the first question you actually get? And let me ask you that first. I have a follow-up to that. But.
Yeah, no, that's a good question.
Because what?
What do they ask first?
So maybe I'll share the experience a little bit more. So, because you're not the guy who gets on stage and beats your chest and says, "Look how great I am," right?
No,
This is one of those rare.
Not unless I'm forced to. Yes,
this is a rare sighting, which I appreciate, obviously, of Steve Gray and the inner mind of Steve Gray. And so, sharing this, so people, they'll look at you and go, "Oh, you're not just one of the attendees at this event," or it connects, right? And their eyes get big, and then they go, "Oh, so." And then there's a meaning to them, or there's an interpretation of them. But do you ever get the best question? Like, what I was going to ask as a follow-up is, sometimes, as Dan Peña says, people never ask the right question. What they really should ask is X. What's that question that if you were at, the last internet marketing event you were at and somebody had that and they went, oh, you're Steve Gray, I know who you are. What question do you think they should ask if they're on the journey trying to pursue, success in e-commerce or online or direct?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I can answer that one. The first, so kind of to your first question, the first response is when they find out that you're doing significant revenues or buying a lot of advertising to drive that revenues. It's always like these most marketers have this, it's like this crack cocaine addiction to traffic. And they're like, oh my God, traffic. Oh, what's the magic thing for this or the magic thing for that? Or, and so that would be like the question that they ask. Mm-hmm. But I think the better question that they should be asking, and then this is not me, but I learned this way back when from Perry
Marshall.
Perry Marshall, thank you.
Yeah, great dude.
So Perry, said, how do you create a business that will allow you to buy unlimited traffic, right? Because it's not about the traffic, as you know, it's about the offer and the monetization. Mm-hmm. And one of another marketer for you that you would probably love to talk with is Alan Sultanic. I don't know if you know Alan.
Oh, yeah, I don't know.
So he's a great guy, super sharp marketer, and he describes it more as the metrics is the wrong word. The kind of trying to think of it here. I'm going to use the wrong word here, but I'll explain it. It's the dynamics or the numbers of the way that your business works. Meaning that, if you bring whatever your front end price is and whatever your upsells and ultimately, if you have a customer that's worth $100 versus a customer that's worth $500, then you're going to do a lot more and buy a lot more traffic with somebody who's worth $500 over time than $100, right? That's the dynamics of how the business works. Right. Economics, thank you. That's what. There you go. Economics, okay. The economics of your business, right? That's the one that they should be asking: is how do I get a customer and turn them into something that's worth 5 or 10 times as much as I pay for them? That's the question that they should be asking. But they ask, how do I get more traffic? Because they want more sales. Well, and it's not, as we were saying, it's not about the traffic to get the sales. It's about having the mechanism to work to pay for the traffic that you're going to buy.
Right.
Ultimately.
Right. And to comment on that, a lot of people are so focused on the traffic, they take the traffic they can get versus looking for the customer acquisition model that's going to work for them next, right? Because even if you can make a profit on your acquisition, that's your most expensive, least profitable activity. Correct. in its single. If you stopped there, right, you wouldn't make really a lot of money. A lot of guys live in just that space, in which that's what I see. But like you're saying, if they're worth $500 over X period of time for you, right, you can afford to spend more than the guy who's getting a customer that's only worth $100.
Yep.
You can bury them and own the market share, right?
And
all
that
you want. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is very true. And that, though, is and does require, is sophisticated and requires a level of sophistication beyond obviously challenge number one is how do you get a customer, right?
Right.
And I know you were talking about books or videos or something, favorites before, but my favorite, best business book I think I've ever read is Mark Ford's Ready, Fire, Aim.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
And that, I think if you read that book
right here
3 or 4 or 5 times, somebody that's just trying to figure this stuff out, that gives you the framework and the idea of what you're trying to accomplish, right? It's like step number one is how do you sell the damn thing, right? Like, what do I got to do to find the customer and sell it?
Yeah.
And once you figure that out, the rest of the business kind of takes care of itself as long as you're paying attention to everything.
Right.
It's not automatically taken care of, but what I mean is that's the hard part. And then building on that, your lifetime value and everything else. And so it does become a little more sophisticated, but that's how Agora's gotten to $1 billion. I mean, they pay acquisition fees well higher than everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Absolutely. Well, and I when I first read that book, it was after I'd left PMI, right?
Mm.
And I read that and went, oh my gosh, we could have saved millions of dollars misspent, lost, in mistakes, focus, just congruency of the organization. Because it was, there are times when you're growing so big and so fast, it starts to break on you.
Yeah.
Because, everybody's, when I don't know if you've had this experience with your team, but when you're smaller, it's like Mark says in the book, that you can talk to each other. And then you start to get so big that your time is so precious. You don't spend as much time getting on the same page.
Yep.
Right. And there are people walking around who don't know the company mission. They don't know who you are. They don't know your cause. They don't know your heart. Right. And they just have a job.
Yep.
And holding that rocket ship together as you grow is something else. But I loved how he unfolds the stages of, okay, here's the next thing to really put your energy to, because this, lock this in, then you can go to the next stage. So yeah, I love that book.
Yep.
Okay, man, you're awesome, dude. Thank you for the time. I have a couple of what I call the Dan Patrick questions for you.
Okay.
So we're gonna bring Mom in. So what is Steve Gray's mom most proud of Steve Gray right now? What would she say?
Man.
Oh, if we could interview Mom, what would she say?
For Mom, probably that I think for Mom, she would be more happy that I, developed as a person who cares about other people, isn't completely self-centered, doesn't only look after what I want and what's important to me, and actually has a bigger perspective of there's more than me out there. I think that would probably, and that's what I say for my mom, because that's what's, that's important to her.
Yeah.
The humanity side, to know that she raised a kid, they're an adult that actually is a nice person to be around. That would probably be.
That's awesome. A good guy doing good things. Yeah.
I think so. Cool. That would be my guess. Yeah.
Oh, very cool. All right. So now you live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, right?
I do.
And I'm sure I'm the only one who's brought this up, because I can't imagine how many times do you get mistaken for Tony Romo?
Never. Never. I've never heard it, but that's pretty cool if that's the case. Yeah.
I had the thought. I was like, haven't seen you in a little while. I was like, oh, Steve, Tony have that same look. So anyway, if Dak gets hurt, maybe you can sub in and come save the day for the Cowboys.
Exactly. Well, funny anecdote. I'm in a EO group, entrepreneur organization.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the guys in my group, his name is David, actually lived next to Tony Romo for several years. So
really,
yeah, I did.
That's cool.
Yeah, I thought so too.
That's very cool.
Anyway.
Right. Okay, so what is your favorite sports team? Who are you cheering for? Is it the Cowboys? Is it somebody else? Is it?
You know what? I don't spend a lot of time watching sports, but I was cheering on the Astros this year. Less because they're from Texas and more because they were the underdog. Yeah. I think they had never ever won a World Series, and that's who I want to win. The guy that's been kicked down and beat up, and everybody says there's no way there'll be anything. That's who I want to say, you know what? Up yours, guys.
That's right. We're going to win it.
That's right.
Awesome. Dealt with the hurricane. I mean, the city came together. I think that was really awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So what? Now that you have your lifestyle, the business and the lifestyle. How's the lifestyle changed? Is there any difference other than you're just in a stronger position to do the lifestyle? I mean, you still travel. You still take your kids places. You
still travel. Yeah, we homeschool, so we take our kids. So, yeah, I think and that's the thing, right? I think everybody's different. But I think one of the things that I've realized is that I don't know what the number is. Somebody said if you make $100,000 a year, then if you make more than $100,000, your overall lifestyle doesn't really change. And I don't know that that's necessarily true.
Yeah.
But I do agree that there is a point at which just because, let's say you make $500,000 a year or you make $5 million or $10 million, there's a point at which all you're doing is spending more for the same thing. Mm-hmm. But spending at a higher level. So maybe if you make $100,000 a year, you might go on a cruise line, right? You might go on a Carnival cruise or a Royal Caribbean. If you make $1 million a year, maybe you rent your own private yacht for a week to go on, right?
Right.
That I think probably is what's changed, but it's just not the underlying, and you know what it's like. I mean, the underlying, once you realize, I thought having all this money was going to change all these things. It doesn't really change everything. It really becomes, okay, I have a little more freedom. I can do what I want to do, but I still got to get up every day. Whether you're working or not, I mean, you still got to get up. You still got to worry about your health. You still got to care about your family. You still got to do all the things you got to do. Mm-hmm. It might be a little easier to do it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but that's kind of my perspective on it.
It's a great answer, right? You've got to have your meaning to your life, right? Regardless of income. There are some who have high income, high amount of wealth with no meaning and miserable and lost, and others, have it all together and have found the meaning, and money is a key ingredient, right? At some level, there's a key ingredient, and at some level, there's more than you need, and you're going to do those same things anyway. But
absolutely, I think that's kind of also a shift for me, is that there was a point at which it was about how much money I needed to make to accomplish a certain goal. Like in the beginning, it was like I need to make like $5,000 a month to be able to work completely for myself. And then it was like, oh my gosh, if I could make $10,000 a month, that would be awesome. And then, okay, well, and you start getting these stair steps, and there's at some point, and everybody's different, but there's some point where the two lines cross, the line of how much money you need to make versus how much you are making, and the meaning that has, I think, is what I'm trying to say. So the making of more money no longer in itself is the focus. It is the result of doing what's exciting. So if I'm making X, sure, I want to make 10X, but that's not because I need 10X. It's just because it would be really cool to take that next level. And so I don't know. I've got a T-shirt that I had my wife buy me for my birthday, which it's actually for game players.
Okay.
But it says just one more level, just one more level, just one more level, just one more level. And that's kind of how I look at things now, right? Like, yeah, I feel like I've done some things, but I also feel like there's so much left that I haven't done. So what's the next level? What's next? What's next?
Cool.
What's next? So
very cool.
Anyway.
Very cool. Yeah. That's kind of it, man. What a great treat it's been to have you on the show today.
I appreciate you inviting me. I'm glad I can help out, and I hope this podcast, not this particular podcast, but your podcast goes great, and you get hundreds of thousands of subscribers.
Thank you. We're out to feed the world, right? Good guys doing good things, doing good business at the same time, and you can do it all. Absolutely. Well, hey man, thank you a ton, and that is the end of our show.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Found Revenue with Tom Collins. If you thought this podcast was helpful, please leave a review. Thank you for your support. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Before you make any investment decisions, consult a professional. This show is copyrighted by Found Revenue. Written permission must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting.